In the last video, we went over how to make the screen and the X button when we can X this window out, this white window out. Today we're going to be learning how to make characters. And to start off making characters, we need to know what a class is. A class is a thing that contains pieces of information like its height, its width, and it has all the functions that define it. Let's get started. Let's define a class square, parentheses, colon, enter. Now we have to initialize this class. Just like we initialize Pygame or start Pygame, we have to initialize this class with the init function. Let's define init. So basically it starts up the class, like sets all the variables and stuff. So we have to define this function called self if we want to be able to use the functions everywhere else. Let's make the argument x coordinate, we'll just call it x, y coordinate, width, and height. Now over here, we have to actually set these x coordinates in self dot form. Let's define self.x equals x, self.y equals y, self.width equals width, and self.height equals height. We have to use self dot because self basically means you can use it anywhere else in the class. Like if we define a different function, if we don't have self, we can't really use this variable anywhere other than in the init function. So the self ensures that we can use it in like another other function. So now we've initialized this class. Now let's draw the actual square part. That's in the draw function. And we have to pass the argument self so we can actually use the self. If we don't use self, then we still can't use these because there's no such thing called self. Over here, we have to memorize another piece of code. Pygame.draw.rect. It draws a rectangle, and the arguments are the surface you're drawing on, or the window, which is wn in this case, self.color, and we should probably define an argument for color here. Like, we need to know what the color is. We could just make it like a constant color, but let's make self.color. So now it's wn self.color, which defines the color of the rectangle, and the arguments over here, this is the rect. There's three arguments: surface, color, and rect. In the rect, you have the x coordinate, the y coordinate, the width, and height. So that's self.x, self.y, self.width, and self.height. And over here, you can see width is equal to 0. Basically, that means if you want a hollow rectangle, then you define the width, how wide it is in pixels. If you don't define it, well, that means you get a rectangle with width as like, there's no width because it's just filled in rectangle. Otherwise, if I do width equals 1, then it will be the width of the rectangle is 1 pixel. And now we can render this class. So let's define square as the class initialize. We have to give all these arguments. Also, self is a special argument that we don't have to actually pass. Self is already an argument that already is passed. We just have to give x, y, width, height, and color. So the x coordinate, we want it to be in the center. So we do this x over here, divided by 2, and y divided by 2. The computer won't get confused with this s and this x because we're not really using these because this is in a class and a function. So we'll just call these two because that's the only x that it can actually use. Square x slash slash 2, y slash slash 2. If you know why I put the slash slash, watch another one of our videos called Intro to Coding. It'll tell you everything about introduction to coding. And we can pass the width, 100 pixels, height, 100 pixels. Let's pass the color, an RGB value. Let's pass it blue, so it's 0, 0 to 55. Now we can draw this class. You might be wondering, if we draw it, won't it draw this and not the actual class? Well, yes, it will, but that's what we want. We can't actually draw the class itself. We have to define a variable that initializes the class, and then we have to do that variable dot draw. We can't just do square dot draw, like if we call this square 1, we can't just do square dot draw. We'll have to do square 1 dot draw, because that's the square function initialized. Let's do square dot draw. If that confused you, then just ignore that. You just have to do this variable dot draw. This variable dot draw. So now if we draw it, we'll have a blue square at the center of the screen. And square has no attribute color. Let's see what that error is. So it says self.color has no attribute color. Self.color equals color. Don't make that mistake. Now it should be a blue square at the center of a white screen. If you want to make this screen black, you could just do 0, 0, 0. RGB value for black. That's the background, so it won't change the square. That's how you render things and draw things on a platform. And we can even make this x coordinate go up. If we could just do this, square dot x, because this is the x coordinate of the square. We can do the class dot variable or function to call that x variable. We can do plus equal to 10. So now we'll have a square and its x coordinate is plus equal to 10, so we'll be moving right. And since it's in a while true loop, it'll move right forever. So now it's moving right. We can get it to move left by negative 10 or minus equal to 10. And we can get it to move up. We can get it to move up by doing plus equal to 10, right? No, this will actually move down. In Pygame, there's a weird y and x rule. For y coordinate, if something adds on to the y coordinate, it actually moves down. So we'll have to make this plus equal to negative 10 or minus equal to positive 10 for it to move up. So now it'll be moving up. If you want it to move up and down at the same time, then you can define square dot y. You can make it. If you want to make it up and right at the same time, then you do square dot x plus equal to 10. So the y coordinate will minus equal to 10, and the x coordinate will plus equal to 10. So it'll go up and right. So that's how you render things and kind of move them. In the next video, we'll be going over how to move things with the arrow keys. See you in the next video.